This is a variegated agave titanota black and blue. Isn't that a beauty? Well, if you're curious about how I potted this plant, stick around. We'll talk about that next. Good morning, agave lovers. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lucas, and today we are talking about variegated agave titanota black and blue. Now this is a beauty. This is a rare one. We can safely call it a rare agave. I know if you're like me and you are a collector, you see a lot of people use that term a lot, rare agaves, but many times it's not quite the case. The market usually dictates what's rare and not. And this one, my friends, is definitely one of those that we can call rare. This is my first variegated black and blue. I do have other variegated titanota, kind of the popular titanota snaggletooth. And you've probably seen one of these before if you are an agave lover like myself. These were, well, they're still pretty rare, but for the most part, these are much more common these days. I would say within the last couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, they've been a little easier to find. I know wholesalers kind of flooded the market with these just a few years ago, so there are a lot more readily available. So it's not quite as rare, but it is still a beautiful plant. I really love the snaggletooth, and here is a smaller one as well. And that was the size of that back in 2018 when I got it, and I paid a lot of money for it too. But these not quite as expensive these days, so you can definitely pick one of these up. Not necessarily from your local nursery, they probably won't have something like this, but there are a lot of agave enthusiasts online. They have their own shops, kind of like I do, or they sell on eBay. I also sell on eBay or on Etsy. There's a lot of wonderful Etsy shops too. Some of my favorite agave sellers do have Etsy shops. So if you haven't checked out that platform, it's definitely worth it. You can find some real gems there. And this beauty, this came from Tony Krock, which is, he has some of the best plants available. So I'll see if I can put a link in the description to his Instagram site. He's got wonderful plants. Everything is rare. Everything is pretty sought after. So check out his stuff. He always has wonderful plants available. So I got this one on Friday. It's now Sunday. And I have it soaking. You can see here, see the roots in here in the water. And this is what I like to do for all of my agave, especially when I buy them from a seller and they are shipped to me in California. Well, he was in California, in Southern California and Northern California. And we have to ship these plants bare root. So, and it's been really hot lately, and we had a holiday on Thursday, so it sat kind of for an extra day in a hot mail box somewhere at the post office. So I like to go ahead and put them, I soak them in water for 1 to 3 days. It's been about 2 days now, so it is ready for me to pot this. And what I like to do, I've talked about this before, is when I put it in a container. This one is a pickle bologna container. I'm from the Midwest, and well, specifically Michigan, and pickle bologna is something you grow up on. It's probably sounds disgusting to you, but if you haven't had it and you like pickled stuff and hot stuff, that's one of my favorites. Anyway, it's a perfect jar for something like this because the agave will sit right on top, and then the roots stay safely under the water. We don't want our water to be touching the bottom of the leaves. That can create a lot of problems with the plant. It can rot out the roots. So we want to try to avoid that whenever possible. I know a lot of people don't know or think that you can put agaves, set them in water for long periods of time. Depending upon the agave, again, this is kind of like when we were talking about soil types. Every agave is a little bit different. I wouldn't do this to a Utahensis. I've tried this also with a Agave Montana. They don't like that. There's a lot of plants out there, and that's where some experience comes in. So most of the plants I have, they can be in water, but again, we have to make sure that the leaves are above the surface of the water. And like stuff like my popular striated Agave Americana, a lot of times when I pull those from the yard, which I just did, I had a video of pulling most of the pups from the yard. I set those in, probably can't quite see it here, in a container. And I did a whole video about this. I had over 100 agave pups in a container, and I come out kind of, every couple of days whenever I can to pot these. So it's safe to put a lot of these just in water for some time. And some of them didn't have roots when I pulled them out. In particular, I have Agave Parasana and Agave titanota lion's mane. They both pulled with no roots, and they have since grown roots. Let me see if I can pull one out here. So you can see, this was a Parasana that came out, and unfortunately I didn't get any roots with it. But you can see here, after being in water, these have been in water for about 2 weeks now. And we're getting kind of the time where I don't want to have them in water for that long. So I really do need to get this one potted, as well as the others that are in here. Okay, back to this titanota. So we are going to be working with a 2-gallon container today. A really good size for this plant. I don't want to go too big because I will eventually, in a couple of years, repot this. So I don't really want a massive root ball quite yet, but I do want it large enough to where it'll have some room to start growing pups. And Titanota Black and Blue do produce a lot of pups, and I'm really excited to have some variegated pups from this. Again, a pup or an offset is just a clone of the plant. So that said, it's a copy of it. But one thing that is going to not necessarily be exactly the same is its variegation pattern. That will change. And that's where we get some really interesting variations here. This one has wonderful striation. It's very equal, very symmetrical. And I'm really, really excited to see what kind of pups it's going to produce. So we're going to put it into this 2-gallon here. That's going to give it enough size to be happy for the next couple of years. And some other options I was weighing is, this is a special plant. It's a special plant to me. It's also a rare cultivar. And I was wondering if I should put it in a display pot. And I'll show you a couple of examples that I like here. So these are just display bowls. These, I think, work really well for agaves, for display. And this is for a larger one here. We've got another size here, and the smallest one here. This would probably be for something like that smaller snaggletooth I showed you. But I don't want to do that with this particular agave, because it is going to produce a lot of offsets over its lifetime. And putting it in a bowl or a container, like a display container like that, or even like this one right here, this is for special agaves. This is a M&M Original Custom Performance. I got this from a Japanese seller who sells titanotas. Great guy. These are wonderful. You can find them. They're really hard to find. I scored one, and I'm never letting this go. So I've had a couple of Oterii in here that I since sold. So I saved this for my special ones. But we are not going to do that with this, because we want to encourage it to produce pups. And what these display containers tend to do is there's not a lot of room for growth. So you can see, how large that is. The the diameter here for a root ball and how small this is. It's quite small in there. So we don't really want to use something like this for a plant that we really want to promote growth. This is just for displaying purposes, or if we have a sale coming up at a farmer's market or something and we want some nice agaves on the table to kind of attract some potential buyers to come. That's a wonderful purpose for that. But for this, I really want to encourage growth. So we are going to be working with some soils and some gravel here. We have our main soil here, which is quite coarse. Maybe about 20-30% organics in there. But for the most part, we have some pumice here, pumice stone, and some of the red stuff. It's a little harder to see. This is red lava. So we've got some red lava in here as well. And for the bottom, and also as a topper, we're going to be using some lava here. And this is about 3/8 lava, little bit kind of different sizes here, maybe 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch. And we will be putting this on the bottom of the container to help with drainage. We're also going to use this as a topper, but we'll talk about that more as we move along. And last but not least, we have 3 lava stones here, and we will be putting those into the bottom of the container. And what we want to do is we want to trap the soil that's in the container, but we don't want to trap all the water in here. We want the water to flow freely through this container, but we want to make sure that our soil stays in place. And I like to use stones for that. I know a lot of people have their own methods. If you're using a 1-gallon container, something a little smaller, I know some people use a coffee filter. It's fantastic, but for something larger, that's not going to work. There's a lot of options out there. For me, I've even used landscape fabric, but that tends to kind of hold back a little bit too much water. So I like to just use some stones that don't completely block the holes, but allow enough water to pass through. So let's get started. Let me set this aside here first. And we will start with the container. And most of these containers are going to have 4 drainage holes here. And we'll set this here. And I have a turntable here. I've talked about this in the past. A turntable really helps you kind of move the agave around when we're putting our soils in here and everything. We don't have to kind of wrench around and everything. It makes planting an agave quite easy. So we are starting with a new one here, a fresh container. This is a special agave, so I don't want to kind of reuse something I've already used. I want to start with something new. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take our large lava stones and we are going to place them in the drainage holes. And this isn't an exact science. We just sort of put these in here to block the hole as best we can. And next thing we are going to do is we're going to fill the bottom with this lava. And lava stone is really good because it's going to help with the drainage. I don't want I don't want any water actually to set on the bottom of this. And if we just have potting soil, especially if we go to a big box store, grab ourselves a bag of potting soil and stick it in a container and throw an agave in there, that's just going to be not a really great soil for that plant to thrive. That is also not the soil that is native to that plant. So we want to use something quite coarse because we want to encourage the water to flow freely. We don't want the water to be sitting in the container for long periods of time, but we do want to hold back some of the moisture. And that is what lava is really, really good for. It's a super lightweight stone that is great because our containers, we're moving these things around. We don't want really heavy soils. We don't want sand. Sand is really heavy. We want to use something lightweight. And the stones, they're very porous and they trap a lot of moisture, but not too much. It's enough to really get us through some of these hot days, which we are in the middle of right now here in Central Valley, California. So let's get started. We're going to take some of the soil. You know, I'm actually going to just take handfuls first, and I'm going to place them around each lava rock in there first. And my apologies that I'm in the shade. My big hat is kind of shading everything right now. I really want to get this done in the morning because if you tuned into my last video, man, these stunt planes, they come out on the weekends. Here in where I live, I'm only like a half a mile from the airport. It seems like every single weekend in the summer, the stunt planes are out and they make a lot of noise. Even though I've got noise cancellation on my microphones and everything, for some reason, it just does not help with the sound of planes. Helps with everything else, but not the planes. So trying to get this done before the planes come out. Now I got some of the lava around each hole. So now I'm just going to come in and put more in here. And once we have maybe about 1.5 inches, we're covering the stones in there completely. We're ready to start putting our soil in here. And actually, before we do that, we want to just check out our root ball and see how large our root ball is. And this one is pretty substantial. It's going to be a really healthy plant, and it's going to do really well in its early life. And looking at this, I'm going to start with maybe about 4 inches of dirt first before we set our plant inside. So again, very coarse soil. We have about 3 inches, maybe a little bit more, and that's enough to get us started. But I'm going to go ahead and get this ready, and we're going to grab our plant. And this will probably be a little bit off camera, but I'll just do it back here. Came out really easily. And you can see it has a really nice root system here. It's very healthy. Soaking it really did a good job at revitalizing those roots. And that's a really good height. So what I'm going to do is just hold the agave gently and start pouring in some of this soil. And when we have our plant in here, and maybe if it's up a little bit too high, what we can do is we can kind of twist the agave, and that'll allow us to push it down without putting too much stress on those roots. So we push down a little bit, but also just give it a little bit of a turn. And when I'm pouring the soil in here, I'm trying not to get it on top of the leaves. Of course, we can come back with a paintbrush and get that soil off the leaves. That's easy to do, but if we're careful in this beginning, then that's just less work for us later on. So, and we're going to put enough soil in here, but we don't want to put the soil all the way up to the bottom of the leaves, because when the soil gets wet, that can cause some damage to your plant. It'll start rotting the bottom of those leaves. And if you're not careful, that can get kind of out of control and rot the whole plant. So we don't want to do that. We're going to keep the soil down quite far, actually about 1 inch or so below the base of the plant. Just grabbing a little root rake here from my bonsai tools, turn it around. I'm just pushing the soil down, and I could probably put a little bit more in here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to fill the rest of this with this lava here. And what that will do is that is going to sit on top of the on top of the soil. And it's going to have a couple of outcomes for us. It will first be an inorganic mulch. And what is a mulch? Well, a mulch, especially an inorganic mulch like this, is going to help prevent the soil from drying out, especially with long exposure to the sun. This is going to go inside my greenhouse with 40% filtered shade cloth. So, well, shade cloth, 40% filtered light. So it's going to only get 60% of the light. And that is something I like to do in the summertime here because a lot of these agaves, they do fine in ground in direct light, but in pots, it's a different story. So I really like to have some filtered light, and the shade cloth does a really wonderful job. Now, you just don't want to go out and buy any shade cloth. Each shade cloth has a little bit a filtered rate, filtered sun. And a lot of the shade cloth that you might get for a porch or something like that, that's about 90% it's filtering out. We don't want to do that. That's too much filtration. We want something, sweet spot I've found is about 40%, and that's a pretty popular number, especially when you're buying online. So that's what I like to use. So the soil on top is going to help us keep the soil moist, so it's not going to dry out so much. And also it's going to create a barrier between the soil and the bottom of the leaves. So if the leaves are sitting on top of the lava like this, it's not going to have the moisture that would be required to rot these leaves. And also it looks good. It's very attractive. So now we are just going to fill the rest of this up. And this little shovel here, this is from the bonsai world. You might, if you're just into succulents and things like that, you might not recognize this. So you could just search in a lot of the bonsai tools and equipment, and you'll see things like this. This really helps pour and get that soil in a very specific place. And that's why I use it. I have another scooper that I use, this little one here. And these are in the kind of the baking sort of areas. These are aluminum, so they don't rust. You can keep them outside. They do get hot though. If they're sitting out in the sun all day and you grab one of these, it does get hot. And a lot of these are in the description below on my page. And I think most of them are Amazon links. And I get a little bit of commission there, but I think in the last 3 years I've made about $1.50 or something like that. So it's not a lot. It's mostly just there to help you kind of find things quickly that I use. I don't really make money from that. It's more just kind of help you guys out with some of the stuff I'm talking about here today. These pots, I believe, are on there. These scoops are on there. Lots of stuff is on there. One thing, a lot of the stuff I don't have is the equipment that I use to film, but a lot of that stuff is pretty ready available. I use, GoPros, and these are Hollyland Mark II, Lark M2, something like that. Very good microphones. I just wish these the noise cancellation worked with stunt planes, because that so far hasn't been the case. Okay, back to the agave here. So we're just turning this around, and again, this is where the turntable is really going to help us with moving this agave around. So we just kind of move it here just to see how well it's stable, because any plant, tree, a bush, a shrub, it's not going to feel confident to start growing until it's very stable on where it is planted. So this mulch also helps us with keeping this plant as stable as it can be. We're just kind of going around, we're just pushing the soil toward the base of the plant. And I have some lava that's on one of these bottom of the leaves here. So I'm gonna grab a paintbrush here. My wife and I and kids, we're all artists. We come from the art world. I am a commercial photographer by trade. I've been doing that. I celebrated my 20th anniversary this past May, which I'm quite happy about. So I've been doing that a long time. I do commercial architectural photography and drone operations. This is kind of a slow time in work. A lot of people are on vacation. My clients are out of town. So this is when I come back out and try to get a lot of this work done in the yard. Right now I'm just brushing off the leaves. And I think when Tony sent this to me, he really cleaned this plant up, so it doesn't require a lot on my part to get this ready for the greenhouse, which is great. Thank you, Tony. Just getting kind of the last of the little cobwebs off here from our huge population of spiders in the areas. So a couple of little things left here, and this is just aesthetics here, just dressing this up as nice as I can. Okay, so it's centered in our container, and we have enough mulch in here to keep this nice and stable. We have one thing left to do. I should say two. Next, we are going to give this agave some water. And after we give it some water, we are going to put it in its new home in the greenhouse. So I'm going to move this here for a moment. A lizard just ran by right next to me and caught my attention. We have lots of lizards in the yard, which is a good thing. I know I see some people, sometimes they'll walk by and see the lizards in the yard and they do a little freak out, which I'm sure I get it. But you know, lizards are great for yards. So I encourage people to, you know, not hurt the wildlife, especially those in a yard where you have a lot of succulents, because those lizards and other little critters out there do a really good job of keeping the cockroach and black widow population under control. So we don't want to hurt those lizards. We want to actually encourage them in our yard. So okay, let's give this titanota, black and blue, variegata, some water. And when I water this, you can see, look at that variegation pop out. Look at that, gorgeous plant. I don't have the turntable here because I don't really want to get that wet. But I do want to make sure that this gets plenty of water here. Man, look at that. Such a gorgeous. I love it that it has variegation on the top of the leaves and the bottom. So a lot of times you'll see variegation, it will be just on the top. So when these are sort of the rosette, a tight rosette, kind of like a ball, many times you don't have variegation on the bottom of the leaves. So you can't really even see the variegation much of the year. In the summertime, these plants like to close up a little bit, and then once fall hits, they open back up throughout the rest of the year. And then late spring, they tend to kind of start to close up a little bit more. So we have good drainage. It's running out of the bottom. You might not be able to see it here. I can see it coming out quite well. And that's because we have a really good soil type with lots of bits, pumice stone and lava that will help with all of this drainage. They're very lightweight rocks, so when this isn't full of water, it's very easy to move around, which is good because I still have a broken wing here. I'm still dealing with this wrist that I need to get healed So I'm still wearing this wrist guard. So yeah, try to keep these containers as light as possible. Don't use sand. Just don't use sand. A lot of times people just think of the desert and they think of sand, and they pretty much just many times will plant these plants with some playground sand. And there's so many reasons why to not do that. I've got into a lot of that in the past, but I would rather just focus on what we should use. And that is a soil that is really good at drainage. So only about 20 or 30% organics, and the rest coarse stone like lava or pumice or even bonsai block. So this has gotten a nice drink. Look at that variegation. Isn't that gorgeous? Such a nice plant. And not this time of the year, but once we start getting into the fall, the teeth will really start to pop out, the colors. You'll get all these wonderful reds and purples and yellows. It's just a really, really attractive plant. And having some variegation added into that really, really sets this plant off. So let's go ahead and get this in the greenhouse, and we'll be good to go. Okay, here we are, back into the greenhouse. And this is gonna be really great because this plant has been kind of in a box for a few days, and in the greenhouse under this 40% filtered light, it's going to do really well and not stress this plant out, especially at a time when it really needs to start growing and stay healthy. This was a real treat for me to do today. It's not every day that I get to pot one of my favorite plants, and this surely was one of those. The Agave, titanota, black and blue, variegata, one of my absolute favorites. Thanks again for tuning in today. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. That really helps out the channel. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those below, and I will do my best to answer those. Now remember, life is tough, but so are agaves. Stay sharp and keep growing. We'll see you next time. Look at that variegation. So nice. Thanks.